he insisted on putting tape around his genitals. Unfortunately, the only tape that was at hand was gaffer tape, which is like duct tape. And I just remember when we finished shooting those scenes, hanging around to watch what happened when Nick tried to pull this tape off, because that was not a pretty sight, and kind of funny in a weird sort of way. It was a funny experience because a lot of the time Judge was kind of out of control and hard to work with. Nicholas was always professional, and his decorum was great. And whenever Nick was around, Judge would really behave himself. But when Nick wasn't around, Judge would throw these little fits and everything. So I don't know how they felt about being competitive with each other. Judge was one of the producers, so-called producers of the movie, and he obviously had approved Nick Cage as an actor. In fact, I think Nick Cage was necessary for the funding of the film. So there was a kind of a cordial relationship between the two of them as far as we could see. But this was a very tough movie to make, and Judge really didn't make it any easier on us. Well, he's intelligent. He's got an immense amount of energy. He's extremely inventive. He has a tendency to go for excess, and sometimes it works really well, and sometimes maybe not. He's always looking for something special. I enjoyed working with him a lot. He was a real professional actor. He was courteous. He had good decorum. He was fun to be with in New Orleans because people would come up to him all the time, either recognizing him or thinking he was another actor, which was always very funny. And Nicholas was always very polite and charming with people. We would go out to dinner, and he'd almost always wind up standing on a table singing a cappella with one of us or a whole bunch of us, and the audiences in these restaurants just loved that. So that was a fun. He was a fun guy to be with. It's interesting. I really don't like the way most American films deal with sexuality on the screen. It's always kind of it almost always feels kind of phony to me, and like coy. And one of the things that I loved about a lot of the the movies that I watched, particularly French, but also English, is the sort of self-conscious way they would deal with sex and nudity. In the United States, I think to a certain extent, people have divided the human body, especially the female human body, up into bits. So there's the left buttock and the right buttock, and the left breast and the right breast, and so on. And quite often you'll see in a movie, in a nude scene, you'll see like a close-up of a woman's breasts in the middle of a scene. And I mean, if you ever see them at all. And in fact, quite often that's somebody else's breast. It's not the actress's breast, because those were it was in her contract that wasn't to be seen. I insisted before I made this movie, that was sort of about someone using sex to control and degrade somebody, that we should not be constricted by having to shoot around underpants and bras, so that we could actually film honestly what was going on. So the actors performed the sex scenes fully naked, and of course it was important. I mean, one of the things that Nicholas just didn't want his genitals to be shown, and we were really careful when we shot it to shoot it like that. I mean, there's full frontal nudity, female nudity, but it's not quite so exposed, and I understand his issue. But when we were at one point when we shot a nude scene, there was a little bit of a couple of seconds of a genital flash from Nick, and when he saw the dailies, he was kind of upset. So from then on, he insisted on putting tape around his genitals. Unfortunately, the only tape that was at hand was gaffer tape, which is like duct tape. And I just remember when we finished shooting those scenes, hanging around to watch what happened when Nick tried to pull this tape off because that was not a pretty sight, and kind of funny in a weird sort of way. The movie was based on Émile Zola's Tadeusz Rakan, which is a terribly depressing story about three people destroying each other. In the foreword to the novel, Émile Zola writes that everybody who read this book hated it, and he got the worst reviews of his life, and he was vilified. And that pretty much happened to me with Zandalee. It can be made. The story can be made to work. I mean, it's kind of the basis or the foundation of A Postman Only Rings Twice, and obviously that cast helped make that work. It was my first American film. I'd been used to working as a director in New Zealand with entire cast and crew who I knew and trusted and knew how to work with, and I was always in complete control of those movies. In this case, there were quite a few sort of quote producers unquote with their hand in the pot, fiddling with the budget. I got told, for example, that we run out of money at a certain point, and I just knew it wasn't true. And the crew and the actors all agreed to work for me for another few days for free. It was kind of one of those things where as a DGA director, they're contractually required to fly you first class and put you in a suite and all that stuff. And then the producers asked me if I would fly coach just to save money for the production, and I agreed to do that, and then found out that the producers were all flying first. Sorry, I just got a phone call. I had to take it. So it's a very strange thing, walking into the situation where I really didn't have control, and I'm not trying to make excuses for myself, but it is hard to change to a country and a whole range of new people, and it's not making an excuse. But the biggest problem I had with this movie was I didn't really understand how to make it work, and I spent several months grappling with that. For economic reasons, eventually, after having been in LA for quite a long time with my family, I needed to earn some money. It had this amazing cast that we'd put together, starting with Nicolas Cage, who I had to meet and chat with before he would agree to sign on to the movie. But he was a pretty big star at ICM at the time, and to turn down a movie with Nicolas Cage would have been hard to do. In my heart, I just hoped that I could pull it off. But we had amazing cast: Joey Pantoliano, Steve Buscemi, Vivica Lindfors, Ian Abercrombie, Marissa Tomei. We had Aaron Neville and Joelle Saunier on it. I mean, it was an interesting movie, and I had this really strong feeling about the phoniness of how sex was portrayed in U.S. movies, and I decided to just take this huge jump and this huge gamble. And honestly, it turned out to be kind of a disaster for me. It kind of shut the door on me getting into mainstream directing and American features, because the response to it was really bad. I mean, when we first screened it, half the people ran out of the theater, and I'm pretty sure it was because it was very hard for people to look at sex being shot that way while they were sitting in a public forum. They're probably used to doing it at home, by themselves or with their spouse. So it was also, I think, the first American film to get an NC-17 ruling, although I think they slightly recut it to squeeze it past that. A friend of mine who I sent the script to told me after I made the movie that there was no way anyone could have pulled that movie off. And I've always felt that there was a way I could have made it work. And it's quite funny because literally more than 20 years later, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and I think I had the answer. It was way too late for how to make it work. And the thing that happened in the movie was it was about this lunatic guy corrupting this woman. And I remember when Nicolas turned up, I met him off the plane in New Orleans, and he turned up looking like a lunatic. He had hair extensions and this weird outfit on and was behaving real loopy. And I just thought he was so amazing, and I really just didn't know what to do with it, but I thought I'd give it a go. And what, of course, I should have done, and I had never worked this out in advance, and of course I'll never again do a movie where I'm not convinced that I know exactly how to make it work, because that's what you have to do, was that Nicolas should have started as a gentle, charming, extremely plausible person, and then we could have given him this beautiful arc to follow of him gradually getting more and more crazy and more in control of this woman. And I think that movie might have stood a chance then. And then to have used the uncompromising way of shooting the sex scenes as a way of shocking the audience to push that part of the story along. I think I could have pulled it off. New Orleans was great. I was enjoying the people I was working with, and it just the movie. I don't think the movie works. I haven't seen it in a long time. I think it's well directed and well shot, but that doesn't matter. Nobody says this is a really well-directed bad movie. It's just it works or it doesn't, and it's the director's responsibility to make it work. And I don't think I pulled it off. But so it goes down to my experiences and the things I've learned from. I made a lot of movies after that, but I didn't quite get a crack at the big time, which is fine. I now make wine. I make some of the best wine in the United States of America. I'm having a ball. I've never had so much fun in my life, and I don't have to deal with a lot of, as a producer friend of mine says, dickheads. So let me know if you need anything else. I'll talk to you soon.